Hey, thank you so much for joining us in our webinar today. I know you're here because you care about inmates. And I also know that you want us to send a book to somebody that you care about, or maybe you just want us to send it to the general prison population on your behalf. Hey, we're going to definitely do that. And at the end of this webinar, we're going to tell you exactly what you need to do so that we can send a book to your loved one or again to the general prison population. So we're excited about that. But you know, it is so lonely to be in prison. Can you even imagine what it means to be separated from every single person that you even know? Not just the ones you care about, but every single human being you even know, let alone the ones who care about you, that there's nobody there in your life. Boom, it's over. Your whole identity has been transformed. You're now called a condemned person. You're called a con. You're called a felon. You're called an offender. These people are offenders. These are an offender. Here's an offender. It's just horrible. Your name is now 194372. I mean, you wear orange, you wear white and black stripes. Everything about your individuality has been stripped away from you, and you are no longer the same person. You moved into an extremely dangerous environment. You're either going to get beat up, attacked, abused. At any moment, you live in danger all day, every day. You're powerless. I mean, you are completely out of control of your life. You only get to do what they tell you you can do. You can't even go to the bathroom at certain times of the day unless you're given permission. It's an incredibly terrible place to be. The only thing I can think of that's worse than that is to be forgotten there. You've been sent away and you've been forgotten by the rest of the world. There's a level of pain there that just blows my mind. And I know you understand that, and that's why you're sitting here right now. So we're Books Behind Bars, and we are a ministry that's dedicated to lifting the burden of inmates, to bringing the light and the gospel and encouragement to them. Now you might say, well, Darren, these people are criminals and they need to be there. Yep, many of them are. And there's a few of them that it was a bad situation that got them there. But I agree. Many of them need to be in prison. They need to be there. But do they have to go to hell? Do they have to live in darkness and depression forever? Can the light of Jesus Christ penetrate those prison walls? And I'm here to say, I believe it can. And I believe we can bring some hope to them. You know what? You're sitting here watching this webinar because you care. And I tell you what, until people care, nothing in this world changes. And I want to thank you for taking the time to watch this webinar. You know, you're not alone in this. Jesus also cares about inmates. And I want you to notice how Jesus phrases this. He says, I was in prison and you came to visit me. What an amazing statement. Jesus is absolutely identifying with that person who's been incarcerated. And he says, I tell you the truth, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers of mine, you did it for me. And that's what I want to do, is I want to reach out to these inmates who are in prison, because I know that when we bring them hope, we're bringing hope to Jesus. And that's the heart of God. And I believe that that's a beautiful and powerful thing. The scripture says this, it's not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. I've not come to call the righteous, but sinners. And so the fact that these people have messed up their lives is in no way disqualifies them for the gospel. In fact, the scripture says that's who he came for. He loves these people and he wants to bring light into their darkness. Scripture says here in Hebrews 13, remember those in prison as if you were their fellow prisoners. Now that's really hard for me to even imagine. I've spoken in a lot of prisons, and I have a teeny tiny bit of a feeling of what it's like to be inside prison. But you know what? I was only there for a couple hours, and I got to walk out the door. I mean, it was a bright, sunshiny day, and my life was just as good as ever when I walked out of those prison doors. But those poor folks, they don't get to walk out of those doors. And when they do, we want to make sure that they have experienced the transforming work of Jesus Christ so that they can live an awesome life. And that's really our goal. So as an evangelist, that's who I am. I've been just a little bit about me. For the last 30 years, I've traveled all over the country, been sharing the good news of Jesus Christ with people everywhere. I love preaching the gospel. But I started thinking, how can I be more effective. And there's a scripture, and it's the parable of the soils. And I want to talk about this because I think I've discovered something that's pretty exciting. It says, a farmer went out to sow his seed. As he was scattering the seed, some fell along the path, and the birds came and ate it up. Some fell in the rocky places where it didn't have much soil, and it sprang up quickly because the soil was shallow. But when the sun came up, the plants were scorched, and they withered because they had no root. Other seed fell among thorns, which grew up and choked the plants. Still other seed fell on good soil, where it produced a crop, 100, 60, 30 times what was sown. Whoever has ears, let them hear. You know, as I've been traveling around the country preaching the good news, one of the things that I found is very often the seed of the gospel is stolen away. Why? Well, honestly, it's just the busyness of life. It's all of these competing things going on. We're chasing family and friends and work and materialism and all of the stuff that we chase in America. And sadly, the people that are in prison, they don't get distracted by that. But you know what? There's our opportunity. These guys have time. Many of them have hit bottom. These people, women and men that have been stuck in prison, are now looking at their lives and they're saying, I need some change. Maybe Jesus Christ could transform my life. And that's when the seed falls on the good ground. You know, the scripture says God opposes the proud, but he gives grace to the humble. You know, when you go to prison, it's a very humiliating experience. You're frequently chained up literally like a dog. I mean, it's an incredibly humiliating thing. But you know what? That means these people are more open to the gospel. Now, what can we do? Well, I believe that there's a lot of ways to minister to inmates, and there's a lot of things that we can do that are extremely effective. One of the things that's most effective that you can do is you can simply write a letter to an inmate. I want to encourage you, that time you spend writing a letter to an inmate is valuable to them. These guys and gals treasure letters that they get from friends and loved ones as they're incarcerated in prison. It means so much to them. The downside with a letter is it does definitely takes a fair amount of your time. It costs not a little bit of money, especially if you're sending 5-10 letters a month. And then when they get the letter, it usually only lasts like maybe 15 minutes. Yeah, they'll get to read it again and again, and I know that they're read over and over and over, but still, it's just, not as much as other methods. So it's tough. Another thing you can do is you can visit. Visiting inmates means the world to them. Now, sometimes that's difficult. Sometimes that means a plane trip. Sometimes it's a 5-hour drive. I mean, a lot of times when you go to visit somebody in prison, it's a big deal. All of the prisons, the closest prison to me where I live is more than an hour away. And the prison where I've done the most visiting is down in Salem, and I live in Beaverton, Oregon. And we're talking, a 2-hour drive to get to that prison and share the gospel or visit with anybody. But those visits mean a lot. It's a huge, huge deal. And if you can visit somebody in prison, man, what an amazing thing. But the problem with it is when you walk out the door of that visit, it's over. And that's pretty much it. And they don't really have anything to hold on to except that quickly fading memory. And so there is something else you can do that I think is really exciting, and that is send them a book. Now, when you send somebody a book, it's powerful. Now, as I said earlier, we're book publishers. And as book publishers, we're very familiar with bringing the gospel to people through books. So people sit down and they start reading a book, and say it's like one of our books where we share the personal testimonies of people whose lives have been transformed. And it's amazing. That it takes about 5 hours to read one of these books. And they're sitting there and they're absorbed in this story. And for 5 hours, they get to sit and, in a sense, get a pass out of prison. And they're driving down the road with you in that story. They're experiencing the life change and the adventure and the transforming work that Jesus Christ does in the lives of people. So sending a book is really one of the best things you can actually do for an inmate. So we're Christian publishers, and what we realized that the most powerful way to share the gospel is through personal testimony. When I tell you my personal story about Jesus Christ coming into my life when I was a young man and he transformed my life, that has power to change lives. So what we've done with this over the years is we've joined up with local churches. And so we've gone all over the country, joined up with local churches, found the 7 most amazing testimonies in each of these churches. And then our team of professional Christian writers have written custom custom books for each of these churches. Then we distributed those books throughout all of their cities. Well, we suddenly realized, wait a second, there's no better place to send these books than to prison. And that's where we get our books. So we got serious about this thing. We really went after it. And we built a team of more than 50 people. And we have writers and editors and proofreaders and project managers and editor-in-chief. We've got graphic arts team. We've got web designers and administration to keep all the balls rolling in the right direction. And we've got bookbinders that are working in the shop and fabricating and creating these books so that we can ship them out the door. And it's an amazing thing what we've been able to create. So much so that over the last 10 years, we have put 240 books in homes all over the United States. 240 different titles that we have written over these last, actually it's been 15 years. So it's an amazing thing that's happened. But we have all of these titles, and yeah, they were useful in their city, but they're so much more useful when they get to go into a prison. So we thought about the parable of the soils, and it says to put our seed into the soil. Where's the best soil? The best soil, I am convinced, is prisons. So here's an amazing thing. We have the copyrights to hundreds of these books. Take a look at this. As these beautiful books come up on the screen, we are seeing so many lives touched as they pick up these books and begin to read the stories of changed lives, people all over the country. We have so many books that if you were serving a 20-year prison sentence, we could send one new book to you every single month for 20 years before we used up all of our titles. That's how many books we have. And we want to dedicate these books to going into prison so that the gospel can transform the lives of people. We've got so many chaplains who have received books from us, and it blows their mind that we just give them to them. And it's only able to happen is because good people get in there and sponsor them, help us do it. But we're able to say to these chaplain, hey, I know you don't have much of a budget, so here, we're just going to give you these books. And then these chaplains get these books right in the doors of these prisons. It's really incredible. And these chaplains are sending us letters saying, thank you so much. The inmates are loving them. And it's really a beautiful thing that happens. So we have the books. We've written 240 of them. And we have the distribution. We got chaplains all over the country that are ready to receive these books and get them to prisoners. We just need some heroes to join with us and get these books to the people who are alone, in the dark. They've been abandoned. They're broken. They've been rebranded as felons and inmates and offenders. And Jesus wants to bring light into their darkness. So when a book goes to an inmate, what happens is he reads it. Well, you know what he does then? He hands it to another inmate, and they read it, and they hand it to another inmate. And these books get handed on and on and on and on. These books get read 100 times before they finally disintegrate. These books are absolutely incredible as to how long they go and how many lives they impact. So just one book brings amazing amounts of transformation. It produces 500 hours. Can you imagine that? One book read 100 times at 5 hours is 500 hours of evangelism. That's an enormous amount of hope, enormous amount of light, and an enormous amount of encouragement to that person who's suffering alone in the darkness. That's only 2 cents per hour. Can you imagine that? I don't know if you would even bend over to pick up 2 cents, but 2 cents will produce an hour of encouragement for an inmate. That's what happens when we put these books into prison. These books not only encourage inmates, but they equip these inmates so that they can then give that book to another inmate and they can say, hey man, you got to read this book. It really helped me. It encouraged me. And when they sit down and they start to read that book, what happens is suddenly spiritual conversations are open up. And guys who didn't have a way to share the gospel with other inmates are now having conversations. And it's a powerful thing because you have equipped them to share the gospel. So for just the cost of 2 lattes, we can send 500 hours every single month to inmates and bring them hope and encouragement. That's what we do. So it's people like you who are changing the world. No ministry can do anything without the true heroes stepping up and taking action. We want to invite you to reach America's inmates, and we want to help you do that. So here's how it works. One book per month is $10 a month. So if you could become a monthly sponsor, we would start shipping one book into prison every single month. Can you imagine one book that touched 100 inmates for 500 hours? Just $10? I mean, that's such a small amount that we all waste that kind of money every month. So 2 books per month is $20. That's 1,000 hours of hope and encouragement. It's 1,000 hours where these guys were able to at least mentally escape their prison cell and experience life for a little bit. 3 books a month is $30. That's 1,500 hours every single month. And then we give a price drop, and at 5 books per month, it's only $45. So that's 2,500 hours every single month that's going into prison as you become a monthly sponsor and encourage these people. But I got some really cool news. We have a donor who has so generously, they came to us and they said, Darren, we want to get books in prison, but we want to do more than that. We want to motivate all of America to get books into prison, because we've got to touch these guys while they're still inside. Otherwise, they're going to get out and they're going to be just as dysfunctional when they get out, and they're going to be living these crazy lives, and they're going to be right back in the next day. So we got to help them. We got to bring this light to them, but let's equip all of America to do this. So he said, this blew my mind. He says, let's do this. For every person who will sponsor 5 books per month, I will match their sponsorship for the life of their donation. Isn't that crazy? 5 books, you're going to support 5 books a month. That's 2,500 hours. Well, because you're doing that, he's throwing in another 5 books. So now we're at 10 books going into prison. That's 5,000 hours. That's less than a penny an hour. 5,000 hours of evangelism and hope and life and encouragement to these people that are so alone in the darkness. We can match every 5 book sponsorship. And it only applies to the 5 book sponsorship. So man, if you can do that one, that would really be a tremendous help. But let me just say this, whatever you can do is going to dramatically impact lives. We have gotten so many letters. One day I got a letter from a guy who was in Walla Walla in the prison there, and they were in lockdown. It was so sad. They'd been 3 weeks in lockdown. This guy's in his cell. He's just bumming out. And the guard comes by and he says, bro, can you help me out? I have been in this cell for 3 weeks. I have read every single thing in here. I am dying in here. The guard says, I'm sorry, bro. There's nothing I can do for you. And the guard goes to the next cell and he gets an idea, and he leans into the cell and he says, hey, buddy, you got anything your friend over here can read? He hands him one of our books. He takes it. And he hands it, hey, your buddy over here gave you this book. He sat down and he started to read this. He said, as I started to read this book, I started crying. I cried through the whole book. And I got to the end of this book and I prayed that prayer and I asked Jesus Christ to come into my life. And he says, I've been changed. And he says, we really need a lot more of these books here in prison. That's what happens when we bring light into the darkness. I want to thank you so much for watching this webinar, and I want to invite you to get involved. Here's how you do it. Now, right below this video, right beneath this frame here, there's a PayPal link. And all you have to do is just click on that link and sign up and become a monthly sponsor. And when you do, it's going to change lives. If you enlarge this video, just reduce the size. Just click on that same little button down there in the corner. It's over in this corner. And just click on that button. It'll bring the video back to the normal size. You'll be able to see the rest of our web page. Click that PayPal link and become a sponsor today. Let's start bringing some hope and some life and some encouragement. We can sit here and we can say, oh, isn't it terrible? But we can actually do something. Let's join with Jesus. Let's care about the people that he cares about. As Jesus said, as much as you've done it unto the least of these, my brethren, you've done it unto me. So let's reach out to them now. So now I want to share with you how you can get a book, how we'll send a book on your behalf. At the beginning of this webinar, I mentioned I was going to share with you this, and I'm very excited to do that right now. So you've seen this image before, and you liked it, and that's why we sent you this webinar link, because we're looking for those people who really care about inmates. Well, here's something that's going to happen. When you click on this image right here on this webpage, right below me, you can see it's lonely in prison. Let's bring some light. That picture of this precious lady who's alone in prison. Click on that link. Click on that picture. When you click on that picture, it's going to open up a page. And you're going to give us your name, your email, your phone number. And then we need the information of the person you want us to send the book to. Now, say, well, I don't know anybody in prison. Just write general population. That's all you need to put in the body of that message. And we will send a book to the general population on your behalf. But if you know somebody, then we need you to do some very important things. And if you don't do this, we can't send it to them. So you got to get it right. First off, give us their name and their prison ID number. Super important. Name and ID number. What institution are they at? If it's Oregon Correctional Institute, put that one in. Whatever it is, put the name as properly as you can, what the name of that prison is. Then give us the mailing address of that prison. In the next 5 days, we're going to send that book to that inmate on your behalf. So please let us do this for you. We're excited about it. The other thing, if you will do something else, we'll send 2 books. And here's what we want you to do. We want to go back to your Facebook page, and we want you to share this link that you just clicked on. Share it with your friends, and if you'll share it, we're going to look through and we can see everybody who shared it, and we're going to send you a little note saying, hey, we saw that you shared it, and we're going to send another book to prison on your behalf. So you'll know that we saw it because we're going to send you a little note right on your share. And so please share it. Get this message out. Let's help some people. We can see some lives transformed. So whatever you can do, if the least you can do is like and share, like Books Behind Bars, please do. But also, let's at least send 1 book to prison. But if you send 5, you're actually sending 10. That would be amazing. That's 5,000 hours of hope to people who are really alone. Let's do it. Thank you so much for taking the time. And hey, we'll see you on Facebook.